In December 1984, American television producer Jamie Chandra received a letter containing a roll of film. When he developed the photographs, he discovered an 8-page document describing a secret organization created in 1947 that possessed extensive information about the UFO phenomenon. This ultra-secret group was allegedly hiding the truth about extraterrestrial visits to Earth from the world for 50 years. The elite unit was codenamed Majestic 12. Questions about the facts and fabrications, about how long the existence of a secret organization could be kept hidden, began to arise. Could a small group of people keep data of global significance a secret? Where's the line between disinformation and a covert conspiracy? In the United States, where the study of UFOs had been conducted by the Air Force for more than 20 years, the Pentagon stated that further investigation into the mysterious phenomenon was pointless. The military declassified all collected materials and claimed they had nothing more to hide regarding UFOs. However, not everyone agrees with this statement. American ufologists approached government agencies such as NASA, the FBI, and the CIA, requesting access to hundreds of documents whose existence had previously been denied. Combined with false rumors about found flying saucers and mysterious men in black, the idea of a global secret conspiracy begins to seem less far-fetched. But is there any basis for such rumors? In 1989, Bob Lazar, a man who became known for his claims about a secret military base in the Nevada desert, told the world about Area 51. His assertions that he worked at a top-secret underground base located near Groom Lake were met with skepticism. Lazar claimed that he was invited to study recovered extraterrestrial spacecraft. He stated that he was a nuclear physicist by profession and was tasked with examining the systems that powered the alien craft. However, information about his education raised doubts, as he did not possess a diploma, and it was unlikely that he studied physics at a higher educational institution. Stanton Friedman, a scientist, posed simple questions based on physics coursework, and Lazar was unable to answer them coherently. Lazar's troubles were not limited to the scientific community. In 1990, he was arrested for pimping. Researchers assert that the reliability of information is determined by the trustworthiness of its source, and in the case of Lazar, reputable scientists were unlikely to take his words seriously. Nevertheless, thanks to him, unusual events occurring in Area 51 became known. Near Groom Lake, several eyewitnesses captured bright objects performing unusual maneuvers in the air on amateur cameras. Were these objects a result of alien technology? Groom Lake was established in 1954 after an agreement between the CIA and the Lockheed Corporation. Here, secret aircraft such as the U-2, SR-71 Blackbird, reconnaissance F-117, and bomber B-2 were developed. Today, military pilots increasingly utilize unmanned aerial vehicles capable of performing incredible maneuvers in the sky which ordinary aircraft cannot achieve. In this regard, it is impossible not to recall the objects that witnesses observed over Area 51. Rumors that the military discovered a crashed alien spacecraft continue to circulate. Many believe that advances in aviation are largely owed to alien technologies. Shortly before his death in 1998, retired Colonel Philip Corso published a book titled The Day After Roswell. In it, he claimed that the military utilized technology from a flying saucer found in 1947 near Roswell, New Mexico. Corso recalled how his superior at the Pentagon, General Trudeau, tasked him with examining the remains of the UFO stored in an army hangar. He emphasized that secret operations were typically handled by the Air Force, while the Army performed the dirtiest work. Perhaps this time the Army decided to play a decisive role in the operation. General Trudeau transferred the remains of the alien craft to Colonel Corso for study and practical application. Under conditions of heightened secrecy, it was decided to pass the remnants of the craft to several laboratories, where scientists were tasked with figuring out the object and determining what benefits could be derived, ensuring a patented invention. There are opinions that the transistor was invented thanks to the use of alien technology. However, if one were to consult the patent office, it could be learned that semiconductors were patented long before the events in Roswell. French scientist Jean-Pierre Petit, one of the leading researchers in magnetohydrodynamics, believes that some technological inventions may have been created with the help of aliens. In his latest book, UFOs and Secret American Weapons, he shares astonishing information that was relayed to him by several American colleagues at a military achievements exhibition. They willingly answered his questions and reported that in 1947, an extraterrestrial supersonic craft was discovered in Roswell, which was not intended for long-duration space flights. This provided the military with tangible evidence of how magnetic hydrodynamics could be utilized. Immediately, a directive came from the higher-ups. We do not want a repeat of the atomic bomb situation. Let this craft remain only in America, so I ask you to misinform the public. The plan worked magnificently. By the early 70s, no one had heard of either the spacecraft or the phenomenon of magnetic hydrodynamics. Research in the United States was conducted in Area 51 in a top-secret underground laboratory. In 1987, while giving lectures at Berkeley at the invitation of his friend Tony Oppenheimer, Corso noticed Professor Kankel, who throughout the lecture could not find his place. Both he and Oppenheimer were 70 years old, and Oppenheimer asked Kankel what was troubling him so much. The professor replied that he was quite concerned, as a Frenchman was openly discussing what was being studied in secret laboratories in the United States, such as the Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. This information was considered so classified that he did not even have the right to speak about anything similar. The French scientist was explaining the actions of magnetic hydrodynamics to second-year students, although in the United States this issue was regarded as highly classified. This created an awkward situation. People from Brighton told Corso that he was caricaturing all their military secrets. As it turned out, Professor Petit was informed not only about magnetic hydrodynamics. He also learned that the Americans had a torpedo capable of reaching speeds over 3,000 kilometers per hour and a supersonic aircraft that could enter Earth's orbit. Furthermore, there were rumors that the United States had already sent a manned spacecraft to Mars. Scientists believed this information without hesitation. The question remains, did Jean-Pierre Petit fall for the bait of disinformers who once invented the myth of men in black? This topic became one of the favorites among proponents of the global conspiracy theory. In the 1950s, amidst the growing interest in the UFO phenomenon, groups of researchers began to form who approached the study of this phenomenon seriously. Although one could approach the activities of such organizations with skepticism, their publications attracted attention. Among them stood out a group in which Gray Barker played an active role, an American who became interested in flying saucers in the early 50s. He joined a small organization on the East Coast, led by ufologist Albert Bender. At that time, interest in UFOs began to gain momentum, and soon after the publication of the article by Kehoe in major newspapers, many began to contemplate the creation of their own groups or magazines dedicated to this topic. However, not everyone went as far as writing books. Most limited themselves to issuing news bulletins. Gray Barker became part of a group that claimed to receive information from around the world. When people from other cities and countries wrote to this organization, they were immediately added to the list, and the network quickly expanded. But then something strange happened. The president of the organization, Al Bender, suddenly ceased his activities. His friends were bewildered. Bender claimed that he was visited by 3 mysterious men in black who ordered him to stop his research. According to him, he had come too close to the truth and had become a danger to someone. These mysterious figures were dressed in black suits, wore felt hats, and traveled in a Cadillac, reminiscent of images from the film Men in Black. This became the first known report of mysterious figures. Unlike Bender, Gray Barker decided to continue his research and investigate what had happened. In 1956, he published a book titled They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, which became the first publication on this topic. Since then, in ufological circles, the Men in Black became a separate subject, although for a long time it did not receive due attention. Most ufologists focused on studying the UFOs themselves, leaving the mysterious figures in the shadows. However, thanks to Hollywood films about the Men in Black, this topic became known to a wider audience. In his book, Gray Barker suggested that the Men in Black might have been agents of the FBI. This conjecture attracted the attention of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which in January 1959 notified its agents in Chicago of their desire to review Barker's book. As a result of the investigation, FBI employees concluded that they had no connection to the events related to Albert Bender. If they were not FBI agents, then who were they? A couple of years later, several ufologists visited Al Bender in hopes of hearing his version of what had happened, but he remained silent. In 1958 or 1959, Bender published an article about the so-called revelation, in which he merely described how he had been threatened for many years. In 1962, Gray Barker published Bender's manuscript, which presented his version of events. The ufologists were disappointed, as the new data did not correspond to what had been outlined in Barker's first book. The Men in Black were neither government agents nor representatives of foreign intelligence. According to some claims, aliens have a base in Antarctica. However, only fans of low-quality science fiction could believe this. Many ufologists with whom the researcher spoke considered this statement to be a common tall tale. Bender claimed that these beings appeared in his home out of thin air and even described them as representatives of different sexes. In his book, Bender shared stories that resembled cheap tabloid reading with elements of eroticism. He stated that the aliens had abducted him several times to their base, claiming that they had come to Earth because of a vital element contained in our water. According to him, the aliens returned to their planet in 1960 or 1961, and only then was he able to reveal his secret. Until that moment, they had forbidden him to speak about it, which became the reason for his departure from the research group. This strange story reflected Bender's personality, as he was not a ufologist in the traditional sense. Barker, who added his remarks to Bender's revelations, admitted that even he found it hard to believe Alberta's account. As a result, among ufologists, the story of the Men in Black ceased to be taken seriously, although this issue was discussed much more frequently than many other problems. Besides the myth created by Barker and Bender, tales of the Men in Black appear in literature about UFOs. In the 1960s, this topic was constantly discussed. In 1967, leaflets circulated among employees in the USSR, stating that citizens in civilian clothing, presenting themselves as members of an elite unit of Air War Command, were visiting UFO witnesses and asking them not to speak about their sightings. The Air Force then stated that such visitors were imposters, and every serviceman possessing information about such incidents was required to report it immediately to their superiors. British ufologist Jenny Randalls, in her book about the Men in Black, presents numerous eyewitness accounts from individuals who have encountered these mysterious figures. The testimonies have been collected since the 1950s, but if the Men in Black are not agents of a secret government service, then who are they really? The researcher expresses interest in these enigmatic characters, asserting that their existence is beyond doubt. However, the question remains, do they have any connection to covert operations, or are they simply interested in any paranormal phenomena? Perhaps someone is deliberately spreading rumors about the men in black, playing tricks on those who believe in aliens. On the other hand, there are people who enjoy wearing uniforms and imagining themselves as agents. Some feel the need to don the attire of police officers or doctors to feel the respect of those around them. Maybe the men in black simply relish their role as agents of a secret government organization. Does such an organization exist? Perhaps it is Majestic 12. In November 1950, engineer Whale Bruce Smith, working in the Federal Department of Transportation, returned to Ottawa after a visit to the capital of the United States and submitted an official report about his business trip. He noted that in the United States, the phenomenon of flying saucers is classified more strictly than the hydrogen bomb. Smith learned that a group was formed in the United States to study this phenomenon, led by Dr. Vannevar Bush, the scientific advisor to President Truman. Rumors about the existence of this secret organization dealing with flying saucers continue to circulate to this day. In the early 1950s, Captain Edward Ruppelt headed Project Blue Book, which was engaged in the investigation of UFO analogs. In his book, Report on Unidentified Flying Objects, Bob Lazar describes how during his work on the project, he was constantly left with the feeling that there was some secret organization behind the study of UFOs. This organization, known as Majestic 12, appears in numerous documents related to its activities. One such document, written for President Eisenhower, was a memorandum that Jamie Shandera received in the form of undeveloped photographic film containing 16 frames. There are at least 2 such films. One is stored with Bill Moore, and the other is with Shandera, and they are absolutely identical. Shandera provided a copy of the documents captured on his film, among which is the famous memorandum from Truman to Forrestal, dated 1947. It is believed that it was from this memorandum that the activities of Majestic 12 began. The first 6 pages of the document, likely written in November 1952, were addressed to President Dwight Eisenhower and briefly outlined the objectives of the Majestic 12 project. The following 2 pages contained appendices to the memorandum, dated the 24th of September 1947, and the document was signed by Harry Truman, the then President of the United States. The memorandum stated that the President tasked Secretary of Defense James Forrestal with continuing work on the operation known as Majestic 12, with the involvement of the White House scientific advisor, Dr. Bush. The documents were marked as top secret and classified, available only for visual review. According to these documents, the Majestic 12 project was initiated under Truman's auspices. Judging by the papers that were able to be reviewed, this project existed under that name and continued to operate under other names until 1976. The documents primarily focused on the Roswell incident and discussed the creation of the ultra-secret group Majestic 12, which was to possess complete information about everything related to UFOs and Roswell. Over time, the project seemingly expanded its research, possibly including the technical specifics of alien spacecraft. Lazar has a document dated 1952 that states that researchers were aware of alien technology. These papers were not unique. In the following years, ufologists received similar documents, always anonymous. One of the most significant documents was the instructions for Majestic 12 agents. After retiring in 1995, Lazar was told by his friend Stanton Friedman, a well-known ufologist, that Don Maldiner, the head of the group investigating UFOs, had received documents that might interest him. Lazar asked Donald to make a copy for him. One of these documents contained instructions for agents involved in special operations, detailing how military personnel should act upon discovering a crashed UFO, what to say to witnesses, and where to transport alien bodies and parts of the craft. In the mid-1980s, when the first documents of the Majestic 12 project were obtained, several ufologists began to study these papers, trying to understand their authenticity. As a result, they began to regard the secret documents with skepticism. Lazar considers it obvious that these documents are forged, and this is indicated by researchers such as Barry Greenwood and Robert Todd. In particular, the signature of President Truman on one of the memoranda was clearly copied from another, authentic document stored in the National Archives of the United States. The other documents consisted of various data, but they did not mention that any real operations or research had ever been conducted. Doubts about the authenticity of the documents arose when they became available to the public. From that moment, forgeries began to appear everywhere, including, unfortunately, among ufologists. If the Majestic 12 project truly existed, its existence would have become known sooner or later. Given the press's desire for sensationalism and the revelation of government secrets, it is hard to believe that the activities of this project could have remained secret for so long. According to rumors, American military personnel and scientists have possessed a flying saucer and the bodies of deceased aliens for more than 50 years, but this information has never become public knowledge. Such research undoubtedly involved many people. If someone could present independent experts with evidence of the existence of UFOs or a project studying them, it would immediately be talked about worldwide. Nevertheless, serious scientists have not engaged in researching this issue, as no one has provided any serious evidence thus far. At first glance, the Majestic project appears quite serious, but when considering why they entrusted such a novice with it, it becomes clear that it was most likely created merely as a diversion. The question remains, why did politicians not tell ordinary people everything they know? If there is nothing frightening about it, why can the project's activities not be discussed openly? Perhaps the government allowed access to the documents of the Majestic 12 project not to share information, but to observe how quickly rumors would spread and what would follow. It is evident that this was done intentionally. One researcher studying animal mutations shared how she was invited into a room where secret documents related to the Majestic 12 project were shown to her. Later, they were taken from her, and she was asked not to tell anyone. This raises the question, why show them at all? Someone was clearly trying to manipulate this researcher. Now the documents have become public property, but the declassification process looks absurd. It creates the impression that they were declassified to see what would follow. Not many ufologists believe in the existence of the Majestic 12 project, but if these documents were a forgery, it only fuels rumors about the activities of secret groups. Besides Majestic 12, there were mentions of secret groups that supposedly studied the UFO phenomenon and were primarily based in America. This was particularly discussed in the book by Ruppelt, published in 1956. He wrote about an organization operating under the auspices of the President of the United States, created to investigate the documents of the Blue Book Project. In the 1950s, Wilbur Smith described his encounters with representatives of the American government. There were many stories about such groups. As for Ruppelt's assumptions, it is likely that the president's advisors informed him about everything happening in the country, including the situation regarding the study of UFOs, which many were engaged in. Today, many documents have been declassified, which anyone interested can review in the archives. Personally, I believe that there was no secret organization studying UFOs. At least, it seems unlikely to me. There were times when there was heightened interest in this topic, such as in 1952 when there were mass sightings of unidentified objects flying over Washington. At that time, the president likely turned to his advisors for a report explaining what was happening. During the period of tense relations with the Soviet Union, The US government could not help but be interested in issues related to unidentified flying objects. However, despite this, no one has seriously addressed this problem since then. Security service officials have not been able to explain the UFO phenomenon, which underscores the importance of this issue. When a conspiracy theory arises, there is a tendency to believe that people in power know everything about the problem. However, it seems that the government possesses more information about UFOs than ordinary citizens. It is unlikely that a secret organization studied the UFO phenomenon for an extended period, although this could be true if they had indeed found something significant. But such a theory seems improbable. It is clear that the government was asking the same questions as society, but the answers were never found. At that time, the issue of UFOs was not the main topic on the agenda, and the government had plenty of concerns. If there had been evidence that the Russians were involved with UFOs, it would have become a matter of utmost importance. There is no doubt that the government had such assumptions, but they soon concluded that UFOs were not related to either aliens or the Russians. This phenomenon was viewed more as a cultural phenomenon, and psychologists managed to calm the population. People of that time were quite superstitious, although there was a trend in society towards a critical perception of reality. Ultimately, the UFO problem was simply forgotten. The existence of a secret organization dealing with this issue seems likely. Confidence in its existence persists to this day, as claimed by Edward Ruppelt, who served in the Air Force. Imagine the year 1947. Harry Truman has information and possibly technology of extraterrestrial origin. What would you do in his place? In 1947, the United States held a monopoly on nuclear weapons, while other countries were trying to convince the US to open access to nuclear technology and transfer control of nuclear weapons to the United Nations. It is known that the US refused to share its discoveries. If they were unwilling to tell the world about nuclear technology, how would they regard such an exotic phenomenon as extraterrestrial technology? Most likely, this discovery would have been hidden from the entire world and even from themselves. Such a phenomenon would immediately become strictly classified. This is merely a hypothesis, but it aligns quite well with known scientific facts. We do not know for certain whether the Majestic 12 project existed, but it very well could have existed. Rumors about extraterrestrial technologies, men in black, and secret underground organizations began to spread in society. Over time, loud claims were made, especially in the early 80s. Researchers such as Milton William Cooper and David Icke claimed that aliens had been captured and had become part of the human race. Moreover, they were convinced that the role of the American military extended far beyond the investigation of the remains of crashed UFOs. There was an opinion that aliens were being studied by secret organizations linked to the American government and large international corporations. Conspiracy theorists believe that there were underground multi-level bases in the United States that were teeming with aliens. Allegedly, on such bases live thousands of extraterrestrials, and their sole purpose is to use humans for their own interests. For them, we represent something akin to animals, on the example of which the productive function of humans is studied. Moreover, they want to create a hybrid of human and extraterrestrial so that the aliens can live among us unnoticed. There have been sincere adherents of this theory who believed in its truthfulness. At first glance, these people seem quite normal and friendly, but in communication with them, it becomes evident that they are engulfed in paranoia. They see enemies everywhere, are convinced that the walls have ears, and that someone is constantly watching them. Furthermore, they are convinced that the government and large corporations have colluded with the aliens. According to their opinion, the aliens closely cooperate with the military, and the funding of this activity is aimed at establishing a new world order associated with secret societies such as the Illuminati and the Freemasons. Unfortunately, such theories are held only by those who are inclined to blame extraterrestrial civilizations for all misfortunes. These people are convinced that any official statement about the UFO phenomenon is merely a cover to hide horrifying secrets, ranging from the existence of aliens to flu epidemics, which, in their opinion, are deliberately spread by large pharmaceutical companies in collusion with the government. Since the beginning of the 1950s, someone has constantly insisted that the truth about UFOs is being hidden from people, that the authorities know more than they say, and that the military should disclose all secret documents. In the last 20 years, such statements have become increasingly frequent, especially in the United States. This issue does not give peace to those who are connected to the military and right-wing groups, who see conspiracies in everything. Some ufologists also show interest in conspiracy theories, questioning what here is truth and what is rumor. Of course, there is no need to consider oneself among those who believe in such theories. This does not mean that to become a politician in France one must join the National Front Party. The prospect, to put it mildly, is not very favorable. Such extreme views undermine trust in all the facts presented by ufologists. Some people simply cannot stop in time. Over time, they go so far that they lose touch with reality. If the unidentified flying objects observed at Area 51 are merely distant prototypes of remotely controlled aircraft, if the men in black are just a myth and not a real existing censorship committee, if there is no evidence of the existence of a secret group known as Majestic 12, then perhaps there is no global conspiracy at all. Some are convinced that the government is playing a completely honest game, while others believe that flying saucers are real and that every new official document conceals yet another piece of evidence of a worldwide conspiracy. Most likely, the truth lies somewhere between these polar statements. There is an opinion that the government is hiding information about the existence of a secret organization and a clandestine conspiracy. However, as is well known, our government is not good at keeping secrets. Sometimes it reaches such a point that everything turns into a farce. For example, the case of Monica Lewinsky, when the whole world learned intimate details about the president's personal life. If our government is keeping the existence of UFOs a secret, then it has never guarded its secrets this well before. Few share my point of view, but I believe that if the problem truly exists, it would require an enormous amount of human resources to investigate it. This phenomenon has been discussed for half a century, and during this time we could not have failed to learn about investigations. There exists a secret government organization through which more than one generation of scientists has passed. Ministers and military personnel who worked in the president's offices would have known about it. The more people would be involved in this project, the sooner rumors would spread. I assure you, we would have known everything long ago. The conspiracy theory is based on distrust of government statements. When we are told that it is a lie, we consider it additional proof that something is being hidden from us. But such is human nature that it plays into the hands of supporters of the theory of a secret conspiracy. This is something I constantly remind my colleagues about. During my research practice, the author, possessing significant experience, encountered not many ufologists, despite frequent business trips around the world. In these trips, he was engaged not only in official matters, but also reflected on the possibility that the leaders of different countries might not have organized an underground organization. He notes that in the last 50 years, certain studies, reports, and conclusions have been classified. Nevertheless, he is confident that the government is acting correctly by not rushing to disclose them. In his opinion, the statesmen have encountered an unusual phenomenon that they are trying to investigate. If they have not managed to come to certain conclusions and explain what is happening, does it make sense to admit their incompetence? This seems quite obvious to him. This situation is observed all over the world. For example, When the government of France spent billions of dollars of taxpayers' money, it did not boast about it, but rather tried to hide the facts from the public. Speaking of UFOs, the author believes that the government has not come to any conclusion regarding this phenomenon and prefers not to talk about it at all. He does not believe in conspiracy theories, claiming that there is no evidence of a secret conspiracy. Sometimes it seems to him that the government justifies its actions by caring for the country's security, but in practice, this leads to the opposite result. Despite the fact that the government manages large sums of money, it is unclear what they are actually being spent on. The author emphasizes that those who watch the sky and ensure the country's security do not know what objects are invading our airspace. He notes that society does not have a clear understanding of whether UFOs pose any danger. However, any astronomer will confirm their existence. We do not know whether these objects have extraterrestrial origins, although in his opinion, this is quite possible. He does not know where they come from, but he is sure that they are real. No one knows what to do with them, but this phenomenon exists, and it cannot simply be dismissed. The Canadian government, according to him, is not trying to hide information, but perhaps just knows nothing at all. This creates the impression of eloquent silence, which can be interpreted as an attempt to conceal a huge mystery. The author believes that it is better for the government to remain silent to avoid alarming the citizens. If it is hiding something, then it reduces the reasons for panic. He notes that the military protects the sky while the police maintain order on the ground. Nevertheless, there will always be officers in the army who may abuse their position. For example, an officer may order a sergeant or a corporal to investigate the landing of a UFO at St. Hubert's base. In such cases, there are no questions. The officer commands and the subordinates comply. Upon returning home, each of them will tell their wife that they were sent by the commander to investigate. These conversations can give rise to rumors, requiring only 2 people. The author believes that at a certain level of military hierarchy, not only in Canada but around the world, there will always be officers who will take advantage of their position to gather necessary information. He asserts that there are no orders for a conspiracy and believes that a worldwide conspiracy does not exist. The government maintains the opinion that the UFO phenomenon may deserve attention but remains unclear. In such a case, it is better not to inform people of its existence and not to disclose information about ongoing research. Some sources mention secret operations and classified projects. However, as one expert notes, no evidence has been found to support the existence of a conspiracy. One thing is clear: the American government has not succeeded in studying the UFO phenomenon, and secrecy has only intensified against the backdrop of the Cold War with the Soviet Union. Military policymakers remembered that rumors about UFOs could serve as a weapon of psychological pressure both on the enemy and on citizens. Serious research on UFOs has not been conducted. Instead, rumors were used for political purposes. No one will deny that the government is reluctant to share information about UFOs. Nevertheless, there is no evidence of a large secret organization dealing with this topic. There are grounds to believe that special classified information about UFOs emerged during the Cold War, when Americans seriously feared invasion. However, should we believe wild rumors and misinterpreted documents? For more than 50 years, society has received knowingly false information about UFOs. The confusion was not a result of the activities of shadow organizations or elite government units. In this game, where distrust reigns, it is unclear who is more to blame. Ufologists sometimes justified sensational stories without any evidence. As a result, they created a fog around the UFO phenomenon much more successfully than all government organizations combined. Facts did not interest them. They sought to prove their point of view and, to justify their beliefs, manipulated data and disregarded verified facts. Without the help of the government, they were skilled at covering their tracks and hiding the truth. With the advent of the internet, As David Vinson, the main character of the series The Invaders, noted, the nightmare has already begun. In the next program, the discussion about the mysterious UFO phenomenon will continue, and we will attempt to look into the future.